Hey everyone, my name is Ben Anderson. I'm with Run Networks, one of Nebraska's top-rated outsource IT companies, and today we are talking a little bit about the different parts of a computer. So we're going to start out explaining what they are. Everyone gets confused when they go to Best Buy or their local electronics store and they see all these numbers like memory and hard drive and CPU, and it's hard to know what's what, right? So I wanted to give you a visual depiction of what these components do and kind of how they work within your system so that you can make the best educated decision for yourself when purchasing your next computer. So here you can see that we have in the middle RAM, which is represented by a table. And in this example, we have 4 gigabytes, or a nice small table, right? So RAM is basically how much surface space you have to open stuff up, right? How many things, tasks, internet browsers, so on and so forth can I have at one time? And then behind the table, you can see that we have CPU core number 1 and 2, which represents the cores of your CPU or processor. The number of cores basically represents how many people you have working around that table of RAM. And then off to the left, you can see that we have a 250 gigabyte hard drive. That's where you're going to have all your storage, right? So hard drive or solid state capacity is what's being referenced there. And that's how many programs you can have on your computer, how many photos, videos, documents, files, so on and so forth, right? So a standard computer in 2024 looks a little something like this. Most computers have at least 16 gigabytes of RAM and an 8 or 10 core processor. So we can see we have 16 gigabytes, or a decent sized table there, with 10 cores working around it. That's generally an Intel i5 or Intel i7 or a similar AMD. And then hard drive space kind of depends on what other storage options you have available to you, and if you want to store stuff to your computer or other places. But right here we can see that your standard retail computer is going to come with either 500 gigs or, in this example, a terabyte, which is 1,000 gigs of storage space. So when you have all your programs open on your computer, it looks something like this. A lot of people don't realize that the operating system, whether it's Mac OS or it's Windows, actually takes a decent amount of RAM or table space, right? And then we have Microsoft Office, Internet Browser, CRM, Slack, so on and so forth. And what happens is you have all these programs open, and then the cores to your processor are working around the table to get everything processed and make an efficient, seamless experience for you, right? And just remember, Windows can take like 4 gigs of RAM at idle, just sitting there doing nothing. So you never want to discount how much RAM you need. More is generally better. And then, hey, for all of you that open up 20, 30, 40 internet tabs at one time, this is what your computer looks like. You're putting more and more burden on your actual system resources when you have tons of tabs open. So try to keep that in mind when opening up new tabs or new internet browsers. Now, one component that a lot of people don't quite understand, or is commonly not looked at thoroughly enough, is what do I need when I have graphics intense processes going on with my computer? Things like Adobe Premiere or AutoCAD or Lightroom. If you're doing graphics intense programs, you need to make sure that you have adequate resources for that. And those computers look a little bit different, or should. So here's an example of what a graphics intense computer in 2024 looks like. You'll notice on the bottom left here, we have 16 gigabytes of RAM. We have all of our normal stuff open. So we have our operating system, Microsoft Office, Internet Browser, CRM, so on and so forth, right? And up in the right corner, we have a graphics card. It has its own table with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it has its own processors or processing cores in the background. So the beauty of getting a computer that has a graphics card or GPU is that when you're opening graphics intense programs, it has its own workspace. It's not constraining your regular system. It has its own dedicated resources that run efficiently in those programs that the programs get offloaded to. And then in the top left, we still have our hard drive space, right? This is also assuming you're saving stuff locally. But what does an underpowered computer looks like? Well, something like this. So if we only have 8 gigabytes of system RAM, we have our operating system and CRM open, there's not very much table space left. And if we have a quad-core processor, which was the bee's knees about 10 years ago, it is just simply not enough people working around that table. And then what happens is when you have too small of a hard drive or not enough storage, is you get unsavable files. So you run into a predicament where you have to pick and choose what you're going to keep on your computer or delete. And that gets really, really tough, especially in business. With inadequate resources, you just run out of, you don't have efficient computing power, and you end up losing money and time. And consider, especially if you have staff under you, well, if I have an underpowered computer and my staff have underpowered computers, how much money or time is that actually costing me? It could be pretty significant. If you've ever gotten the wheel of death, as a lot of people call it, where it's a spinning blue wheel, or on Apple, it's a spinning rainbow wheel, that's your resources are strained at that point. It cannot process things efficiently. If you see that with any of your staff or yourself, you need to look at different hardware most likely. So let's talk really briefly about what the cloud is. There's a lot of hubbub about the cloud, right? Well, there's a couple different versions of the cloud. You have online computing, you have online storage, and you have online software, right? Online computing is pretty cool. So you can actually spin up virtual computers in the cloud. Something like VMware Horizon or Microsoft Azure have options where your staff or yourself can remote into a virtual computer and work from there. You don't have to have a heavy computer at home or at your office in order to do this. You can actually spend more money on the virtual computer to make sure it has ample resources for the job. You also have online storage, which is really commonly seen in SMB with SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, Box, and then Dropbox. And then you also have online software. So a lot of your CRMs like Salesforce or HubSpot or any of those are moving over to the cloud. And you also have things like our favorite, QuickBooks, is moving to an online only software, right? And so there's a couple key things to remember when you're talking about cloud computing is you're purchasing or leasing or renting basically the computing power or software that you're connecting to via the internet. So you need to have pretty good internet in order to efficiently run cloud software. There's a recurring cost for these services. So you're renting or leasing a slice of a physical computer or server in a data center basically. And then you can reduce the amount of local computing power that you need, saving you the initial cost of a computer, but you typically end up paying more over the long run with a subscription. So just to give you kind of a visual example of what that looks like, in this particular case, you see on our computer down there, our RAM, we have an operating system, internet browsers, a couple of them, right? Slack, Zoom, and then we have a really small hard drive. Well, up in the cloud, we have a little bit of hard drive space there, storage, right? Which is going to be like your SharePoint, Google Drive. Microsoft Office is now in the cloud, and CRM is in the cloud. So it freed up a lot of table space on our computer, but the cost is we're paying a recurring expense to get those softwares in the cloud. Now, part of the beauty is with the cloud, especially with file storage, is if your computer crashes, but all of your files are in the cloud, you don't really care too much. Assuming it's current and synced, all of your data is still in the cloud. There's other major benefits to the cloud as well, such as I can access files on the go wherever I am. If I forget my laptop at the office or I don't have access to a computer to work on, but I need to get, let's say, a pay stub for a mortgage or something like that, I can go to our cloud hosted HR software or Microsoft SharePoint and get the information that I need, which is great. So a little bit about what Run Networks does. So we help business owners and managers keep their data secure and staff efficient. We act as a comprehensive IT department and technology partner. We are an outsourced IT company, and we are very good at what we do. What we do is we support, manage, and protect the most important systems and data that keep your business operational. And we typically work with companies that are 5 to 200 employees. Our bread and butter are really companies that have 20 to 150 employees. We work with a good number of law firms. We're the only IT provider endorsed by the Nebraska State Bar Association, a good number of accounting offices, medical offices, engineering firms, and a handful of other industries. There's not one vertical that we serve better than another. And then what comes standard with our services? So endpoint protection is a really important component nowadays. If you are working with an IT provider that banks on antivirus being their main solution for protection on a computer, that's probably an IT provider you should steer away from. That protecting computers has evolved a lot over the years, and antivirus is not sufficient anymore. You need a comprehensive endpoint protection solution, which encompasses a couple different things like zero trust. It's looking for, it has MDR built into it, which I'll talk about here in a second, and a few other components, right? We also manage updates. We keep Windows up to date, vulnerability free, and then we withhold patches that may cause stability issues for your software until they're stable. Managed detection and response, or MDR. This is probably the most important thing to have in your network for both your computers and your cloud systems. MDR is watching for threats around the clock, 24/7, 365, and it's people with eyes watching what's going on. One of the most common vectors that we see people getting through, bad actors getting through, is the cloud. And it's simple phishing emails that people are clicking on, and the bad actors are doing what's called a session hijacking. They're basically logging in as your user and bypassing multi-factor. If you have a competent MDR or managed detection and response solution for the cloud, you should be able to correct these and catch them within about 15 minutes. Managed backup is huge, right? So making sure that you're prepared for a disaster and are able to recover data in the case that you need it. Network security is humongous as well, making sure that you have the appropriate firewall to keep your business safe and efficient. Network segmentation, making sure untrusted or higher risk appliances can't hop over to your internal computers and cause problems. And then performance monitoring, making sure everything's running as it should. Cybersecurity training is included in our packages. So you get once a quarter, you get a nice little program that'll run you through a 5-10 minute module and talk about what's going on in relation to cybersecurity, and each module is different, right? So you're not getting the same stuff every few months, and it doesn't take a whole lot of your time. And as an office manager, HR manager, or owner, you can actually track who's completed their tests and that sort of thing. And we send out fake phishing emails to see who's super click happy and maybe not listening to their training. And you can know where your vulnerabilities in your network are. And then for some of our larger clients, we do what's called VCIO, which is regular meetings with a senior management member of Run Networks, where we're discussing strategy, long-term planning, what's going on in your network, what are trends we're seeing on your help desk, and then discussing some of the higher level stuff, right? So if you're ever in need of a new IT partner, or you think maybe I'm not getting what I need, or you just want some advice on what hardware to buy, feel free to reach out to us. Once again, my name is Ben, and I'm with Run Networks, and I appreciate your time.